Welcome to Drinks in the Library, the only library where drinks aren't just allowed, they are required. I'm your librarian host, Gigi Howard, and each episode I'll be interviewing a guest about a much-loved book that we will be pairing with a drink for you to enjoy along with us or consider for your next book club meetup. As always, stay curious and support your local library. Hello, Libration Nation. This week, I am coming to you with my artiest episode yet. We are talking about the book, The Friday Night Club, a novel of the artist Hilma af Klint and her creative circle. And I'm coming to talk to you this week with my friend and neighbor, Izzie Call. Izzie works as a museum educator for the Virginia Museum of Fine Art, coordinating projects related to the permanent collections and special exhibition displays, including digital components, labels, and web resources. She is a lifelong, passionate educator and feels most at home with speaking about art with those who have an interest in learning. And that's what this conversation is. It was just, me taking in all of Izzie's passion about the subject, and it was a really good time. And we paired the book with Swedish 75, which was delicious. So thank you, Izzie, for bringing all of this to the show this week, and I hope you all enjoy.
I started listening. It was The Exorcist, which I loved. Yeah. I was hooked.
Yeah.
God, I was hooked. And so I've been listening since then. I need to go back and listen to the others. But
I think that came out, that was like my third episode. So I think this week I'm releasing episode 11.
Wow.
It has, I'll be honest with you, there was a point like in February, because I had been talking about doing it for so long, I was like, is this actually going to happen?
Yeah.
And I sort of like took a weekend and like just sat in here and like figured out how to do all of the technical stuff.
I'm so impressed. It's just really cool.
But yeah, it has just been fun and enjoyed doing it. So, all right, let's get started. So, I guess first thing we'll do. Oh wait, where's my book? Okay, sorry.
Oh, you got one.
I got the book.
Did you read it? It's okay to say no. I'm just so glad you have it.
I did get the book. I do really try. We did just pick out the book this week, or you have already read it, and it's The Friday Night Club, a novel about Hilma af Klint.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so we got it. This week was my birthday, and it was also Taylor Swift released 31 songs on Friday.
Are you so tired?
I did stay up the first day. So she released. Are you? I know you're not.
I am Swiftie adjacent.
Okay.
I appreciate, I acknowledge, but I am not quite to the point of listening to everything that night. So
yeah. So we had already stayed up. It was like 11:30 the night before, and I was like, "What's 30 more minutes?" So Bill went to bed, and I like stayed up and listened to it. But then at 2 a.m. and then I went to bed at like 1:30 after I finished it. And then at 2 a.m., she released, like, another album. So...
Did you know that was going to happen?
No, I didn't know. Okay. I don't think she said anything. I didn't know when I went to bed that night. Now, I was super sleepy. I wasn't, like, checking social media or anything. But, yeah, it was... I really wanted to get to it, but I just wasn't able to. But I did listen to a few podcasts about Hilma, and so I know all about it.
Well, I can't wait to hear what those podcasts are.
Oh, well, yeah. They were... Yeah, I just learned a little bit about, like, the art and everything, but I'm really excited for you to be here because you are an artist.
I would say a lapsed artist. Yes.
What kind of art do you...
Did.
Okay.
So,
Let me be very clear.
I have an art degree, and, painting, fiber arts, I was originally planning on being an art teacher. And then my last year of undergrad, I sort of got into the gallery setting at JMU and realized that there's this whole other side to art, which is talking about it and like telling stories. And that's where it kind of bit me. So I ended up finishing my licensure, but it kind of formalized for me that I really wanted to work in museums and specifically in museum education. So I got my master's and I work as a museum educator.
Excellent. And you work for...
VMFA,
the Virginia
Museum of Fine Arts, in our education department, specifically in a branch called interpretation, which is all about thinking of what does art mean to the visitor and how can we make it matter to the visitor? Like how can we make them care and get interested and want to come back and
Well, I love VMFA. It's very cool. And I'm not a Richmond native, but it is a nice aspect of living in the capital of a state or the Commonwealth, as they like to say here.
Yes. We're a state institution. So, you know.
It's a very cool thing to have like the main art museum like 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
I love that. And so the book you chose, The Friday Night Club. Let's just start. Why did you choose this book?
So I chose this book to read or chose this book to talk to you about?
Yeah, to talk, or both.
Okay.
Let's start at the beginning.
Okay. So this is a new book that I finished in the last month or two.
Okay. And it came out last year in 2023.
Was it that late? I think you're right. Yes, they were writing during COVID, so 2020, and it published in 2023.
Yeah.
So, full disclosure, I was watching this awful movie on Amazon, and it's called Upgraded. I was having like a movie night with a friend, and we picked this movie, and I really, it said in the description, like, oh, it's about this like young gallery worker, and she goes to London, and she gets upgraded. Meaning, like, on her flight, she's all of a sudden put into first class. And then from there, it just spirals out of control. Everyone thinks she's, like, the gallery owner. And she, silly sitcom ensues. But the opening scene of that movie showed this little picture. And she's talking about it. And it's a Hilma af Klint work. It's called The Swan. And I was struck not only by her delivery of the script talking about this piece, but also the meaning behind it. And it was just the idea that like one work can hold so much meaning. And it's all about just its placement and your relation to it and how you're feeling that day when you come upon it. But I had never heard of the artist. And so I Googled her and discovered not only this book, but an American debut exhibition that occurred in 2019. At the Guggenheim of her work and just kind of fell into it from there. But I wanted to talk about it with you because I feel like there are so many interesting similarities to the story that the authors are trying to tell about this unfound artist. And I should say that in air quotes because she's, people should know her name, right? She's very much the mother of abstract art, but she's overshadowed by people like Vasily Kandinsky, the people that you would think when you think about abstract art. But there's also this subtle piece to it of spiritualism, which I'm incredibly uncomfortable with, the idea of like spirits and communing and seances and the dead and all of that. But I could see you vibe with that.
Oh, yeah.
See, I knew it. I was like, everything about this, the parts of the book that I was like, I don't like this, and I'm going to like read fast. I was like, Margaret would love this.
Yes. I've talked about it. I still definitely find myself more in line with like the Christian faith, but like I would definitely call myself more of like a hippie Christian type of, like good vibes. Like, do you know Anne Lamott?
Yeah.
Like that's I just wish I could be her. And yeah, so I definitely I definitely go and like commune with nature and love the sky and the sun and
Yeah, and maybe it's about like there just being like a bigger message than what we're doing every day. And that's sort of what I got from this is the idea that these 5 women would come together and have conversations, but also like bounce ideas off of each other. And this piece where they, you know, believed that spirits were communicating through them and telling them exactly like what brushstrokes to make, what colors to create, how the painting should piece together. That can also be, you know, related to our life in that, you know, things can happen outside of our control that can affect what happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely feel the presence of God or the universe or whatever you want to call it as something that we are all connected to all the time, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
And so I think being open to that, you know, sometimes you find yourself with a little bit of magic.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's funny, the authors, I listened to an artist talk about the authors because that was one of the questions you said you might ask was, you know, about, you know, what can you tell us about the author? And I was like, well, I don't know anything. So this idea that it was written by 3 people was so interesting to me.
Yeah.
After the fact, like after we had like decided that I would come and we would talk about this, and I looked at the question, I was like, oh man, I got to figure out what it's about. But the three authors and how that came about, and just this idea that when you are with like a group of people, your experience can even become more varied and interesting, and how that's a part of the book, but it's also a part of the authorship of the book. And I loved that.
I was thinking about that too, because the story is about these 5 women who come together, and it was written by 3 women who came together to write it. So let's talk about the drink you chose.
Oh, yeah.
And I do appreciate you picked it out yourself. You even brought the ingredients, which I thank you very much. I'm always
happy to oblige.
I am always happy to make you a drink as well. So what is this beautiful pink cocktail I have?
So it's called a Swedish 75, and that's mainly picked because of Hilma's nationality. She is a Swedish artist.
Yes.
Upon looking for kind of drink aspirations, I was talking with my partner about like what I could do, and I was showing him some of her paintings. The paintings, as I mentioned, are very abstract. They're kind of otherworldly, very colorful. So he was thinking of like a Cosmo. Too cheesy.
Like cosmic.
So I went more like direct and just said,
Uh-huh.
okay, it's Swedish. But a drink that I love are French 75. So this is just a take on that. Sparkling with lingonberries makes it Swedish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So say it again. Lingonberries?
Lingonberries, yes.
Yes. What is that?
That's a berry in Sweden. And so it's it's in a jam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's a little like muddled fruit to make it this pretty color. Yeah. And then a little lemon and gin. Sorry, there's gin and sparkling wine.
All right. I think you already kind of talked about it with getting started with Upgraded. The film you were not...
Just don't take that. It's more like I liked the first 5 minutes and then the rest of it was just fun and fluffy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. But I need to give it its due because it didn't pick a male artist to talk about, and that's what pulled me in. It's this idea that there's this famous essay, and actually the book mentions it, Why Have There Been No Famous Women Artists? It's by a historian named Linda Nochlin, and this is kind of like seminal art historical text. And the question is ridiculous, right? Because there have been no famous women artists because it's a male-dominated field. The men are crowding the women out. So that is what pulls me in. I have a passion for female artists, female voices in general, and that goes back to my graduate work, looking at artists like Faith Ringgold. I did a paper on a French artist named Angélique Manger, and these women are often in the studios of greater artists. Sorry, air quotes. They're in the studios of male artists, and sometimes their work is even taken by them. And that's just what was expected. So there's this like feeling of catch up, right? This feeling of like, well, we have to like make their stories known. So that was the pull for me. It was this female artist that I had no idea about. And the thesis being that she is the mother of abstract art, not all these men that we hear about. And I love that. I love that idea that there's something out there that can upend the way that we look at something. And the fact that we can still figure that out is really exciting.
I was listening to an art podcast talking about Hilma, forgive me, I don't remember what museum they were referencing.
Guggenheim, maybe.
Maybe Guggenheim.
Yeah, that was her show was.
Okay, but they had like artists by decades and artists by years, and they put her art in the 1913 decade, which was when she was creating, but they said, well, nobody was looking at her art until like the 80s, the 1980s. So really, that's when, she became big, years and decades after her death.
Yeah, and that was her choice. I mean, that's part of the book. It sort of leads up to this pivotal moment where she says, the world isn't ready for me. The world just like isn't ready for how great this is. And she locks it away. And she even takes a step further and she says, I'm going to burn all of my personal narrative.
Did she?
Mm-hmm. Letters, books, journals, sketch pads, like everything that would fill out the artistic narrative, she burned. And she did that probably for a number of reasons. But a big one is what these authors posit is that she was in a homosexual relationship, which was not allowed. So she chose to burn all of her personal narrative, and she wanted the art to speak for itself, right?
Right.
This series of paintings called Paintings for the Temple, and they weren't discovered until this later time period. Mm-hmm. And what I find fascinating, and I think a commitment to her belief in what her art means, is that a foundation was established that owns all of her art, and that foundation just works with individual museums to put on shows. So you won't find Hilma's work around the world. It's very much kind of included in shows here and there, and it's always on loans or borrows. It's not something that is purchased on the market kind of thing.
Right.
And it's a true sticking to the story that Hilma wanted, which I think is important. The idea that someone can write their own narrative and want that to be what's discussed about her.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's how we all feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is kind of a bummer to hear that she burned all her journals and everything. That would have been beautiful.
Well, and that gets to the creative circle piece of the book. The four other women didn't.
Yes.
So they fill in the story.
They fill it. And the four women are Anna, Cornelia, Sigrid, and Matilda. Mm-hmm.
So these are women who lived. You can identify them. And I've been trying to find the photo that is referenced in the contemporary timeline of this book. We didn't mention that. It's like a bouncing back and forth in time.
Okay.
So there's a contemporary timeline and a past with Hilma. But in the contemporary timeline, they talk about this photo of five women, and it's these five women, and it's just footnoted as the Friday Night Club.
Okay.
So Anna and Hilma were really good friends from art school. And then Cornelia was also in school with them, and Cornelia was sisters with Matilda.
Okay.
And Matilda and Sigrid were the ones who felt like they were the spiritualists. They could commune. So it's this beautiful relationship between all these women and how they can contribute to the creative output of the group.
Yeah. So since you brought up the two timelines, so who's in the contemporary timeline looking back?
Yeah, my least favorite part of the book.
Oh, okay.
But that's okay. It is what it is. It is a male curator at the Guggenheim who is faced with mounting a show of Hilma's work on a really crunched timeline. They had something fall out, and so they had to fill a space in their exhibition timeline. It's sort of it's his own personal journey of finding Hilma and understanding her and reconnecting with an old love, and it's fine.
Oh,
yeah.
You were like, let's get to.
I really liked the
Hilma,
the Hilma piece of it.
Yeah.
It felt so researched. I can't say how 100% accurate it is, but it just read that way. It wasn't overly flowery art historical language. It just felt very real, mentioning the people and the time period and where they were and why they were there, and I just found it very engaging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. At first, I thought this was narrative nonfiction, but it isn't fictional novel.
It is, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, it is the creation of three women. The one woman, Sophia Lundberg, she is from Norway, I think. Anyway, Alison Richmond saw the Hilma af Klint exhibition in 2019 at the Guggenheim and was, blown away.
Yeah.
She had recently met Sophia in Norway and thought, well, have you heard of Hilma? And she said, of course I've heard of Hilma.
Okay.
Because in that area of the world, she is, the person. She's the person who did abstract art and is this wonderful figure. But of course, in our world, we only know of,
Right.
Donald Judd and whoever. But
Right.
so they connected. And then Allison knew MJ Rose. And MJ Rose is someone who writes a lot about spiritualism. So they brought her in from that aspect.
Yeah.
So they have this wonderful, three points of view on this story. And specifically with Sophia, she had the in with the research at the foundation. So she did a lot of mapping of timelines and making sure she was getting all her plot points right.
Yeah. Well, I love that and bringing that story back to life. And yeah, like you said, in fairness to everybody, there's a lot of art in the world, period. So, but what does tend to make the top of the pile in both art, in writing, is male.
Male, money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you want to find out who's in charge, you look and who has the money.
Right.
And so talking about, who are the characters and what's special about them?
So we talked about the five women and their kind of relationship to each other and how that worked. It was Hilma and Anna that they were positing were in a relationship together.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of traveling together. They obviously went to art school, just lived a very long lives together. So that's a really central relationship in the book. The other three women, while a part of the group and committed, weren't quite the focus. So that was really interesting. And there's a lot of present-day conflict with Anna's family and Hilma's descendants about who even painted these paintings. There's a lot of, there's questions about authorship and should Hilma really be getting all the credit? So that's not something, well, yes, it does come into play with the book, but I think it's even more present now.
Interesting. Does the book discuss their relationship? Was it a lifelong relationship? Did they break up?
They did break up eventually, just decided to go separate roads. I think Anna felt very deeply for Hilma, and I'm speaking to the narrative form here.
We don't know for sure.
Exactly. We don't know. The letters are burned. But I don't think Hilma returned those feelings.
Okay.
And though they were dedicated to each other, and it was to the point where Anna would say things like, I know you have things to do and say, and you are better than me. I am here to just make sure it happens. I mean, and this is true, she funded purchasing art supplies for her. She built a studio for her. She paid the taxes on the land that the studio was on. I mean, she believed in her. I think it was just kind of and again, in the narrative book, a mixed, just not quite on the same field of that affection being passed back.
Okay.
So lifelong connected, but they were definitely points, it sounds like, at the end of their lives that they sort of drifted.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then they have descendants, so did they have children?
It's like nieces and nephews.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hilma never married. Don't hold me to these things. But what I've heard is nieces and nephews and not
children.
And there is a storyline. There are a couple storylines that I'm just not as interested in, but Hilma spurned a fiance, and that's a thing.
Okay.
But
you're like, don't care.
I mean, a love-crazed man who can't be told no, next. But there's also a storyline in the present day about this, very real story in the art world right now is the idea that certain families have funded the opioid epidemic in the United States.
Yeah.
And they are also great supporters of art museums. So that is something that is fictionalized in here.
Okay.
And
but it is real. I imagine your world, that's a big...
Yeah. It's, yeah. Just like we were talking about, the people with money are the things that get things done.
Yeah.
So it's a hard pill to swallow.
Sure.
But that is another part of the contemporary storyline that they talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. What would you say, like, what is the vibe of this story? Is it fun? Is it serious? I mean, it's very well researched.
Yeah, it's very well researched. So when you were saying, like, it is a drama. It's a story, and that's always going to be something that I'm more interested in. I'm not really a biography person, or I've tried. Like, it's just not my thing. So it's engaging. It's a page turner. I do think you have to be like somewhat interested in like what's being put forth here, which is this idea of, women in, at that time, an illicit relationship and hiding things but believing what they're doing is important. That's like some level of interest in that kind of thing. But no, it's like a quick, easy read. I mean, when you like said, do you want to come on? I was like, yes. And I want to talk about this book because it was just like really, I wouldn't say like a fun read because, some of it is kind of sad that she felt like she had to like obliterate her personal... I mean, I can't imagine doing that right now.
Right.
The idea of like erasing my thought from the world anytime I wrote something down.
Right.
For the good of a reality that you'll never see. Yeah. She knew that. She knew she would never get to see her artwork get the acclaim that it should.
Wow.
And like, that's kind of a downer.
It is a downer, but did she have the faith that it would eventually get there? Okay.
Oh, yeah. She knew it. Like,
she was very spiritual.
Yes, yes. And as much as I was like joking that like that part made me uncomfortable, like that is who she was. She believed that, she was doing something that was important and it would be appreciated at another time that she would not live to see. Yeah. And that kind of certainty, I think, is really admirable.
When people talk about faith, I mean, that is faith.
Yeah.
It's channeled a little bit differently than I think a lot of religions. Faith in oneself.
Right. Belief in what you are doing matters.
Yeah.
And it will matter one day.
Yeah. Let's see. And we already talked about the characters and then the genre. So like I said, at first I thought it was narrative nonfiction. It is a novel. Do you read a lot of stories like this?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. I was thinking about it, just the idea of, I call this like art historical fiction because I like historical fiction in general.
Yeah.
But when you add in like art, I'm like, oh, okay, we're done. Like, I love Tracy Chevalier, who did Girl with Pearl Earring. That was one of like my like seminal books when I was, I guess that's like early 2000s,
yeah,
right?
I think so.
It just, it was the idea that could be popular, and people could care about who Vermeer was and or the people in Vermeer's paintings. So I love her work. I've read everything by her, but The Goldfinch by, just this idea that art can be really interesting.
Yeah.
And can be a bestseller, I think is really cool.
I mean, it's not like I'm not into art, but I didn't do it a lot as a growing up. I was never into crafts. I'm by nature, I like things in its place. I always find my daughter is very artistic, very, very artistic. And I don't know if I ever told you this. She'll say, "Mom, what you call trash, I call crafts."
Excellent. I love it.
Yeah. So, and I have accepted that like we're all different, and that's great. So, but I do like to like learn more about it, and I have, as I've gotten older, I'll go and I'll be in a museum and I'll sit and I'll just stare at something for a long time. Do you do that?
Oh my gosh, that's like the best. I'm so glad you do that, Margaret. It's like something, the museum educator in me, like if you go to a museum and just pick one room, Not even like a section.
Yeah.
Just one room. I mean, if it's one work, that's even better. Just sit and look, sure. But, there are these like activities that we do where, you say it's 10 times 2. So find 10 things to say about a work of art and now do it again. And don't repeat. Or look at a work of art for 30 seconds. Now turn around and describe it to somebody. Like these kind of like opportunities to really sit with something. Because if you think about it, these artists spent time with it.
Right.
They didn't take 3 seconds to do it. So if you spend more time with it, what can you get out of it?
Yeah.
So I love that. A+. You should absolutely do that. Sit with a work of art.
Yeah, I do. I've gotten, I definitely, when I started going to museums, I would just sort of walk by and be, the VMFA, there is a dog playing a piano on
Yes.
one, I don't know what the name of it is. That's my favorite.
I love it.
Because I thought it was just so cute.
The European art curator hates it.
Oh, really?
In his mind, there are cuter dogs. There is now a pug, a little sculpture of a pug that he loves. So.
Oh, okay.
But trust me, that dog's not going anywhere.
Okay.
Everyone loves that dog.
Yes. Well, I'm very impressed. So when did you start doing art? I mean, when did you start?
I've always done art, all in high school. And, when high school comes around, they'd start saying, what are you going to do in college? And I was like, well, I guess I'll do art because this is all I do. So kind of just like a natural, like, this is how I've been filling like 80% of my time. So I guess I'll just do it 100% of my time. And then, like I said, in senior year, I realized there was this whole other aspect to it that I could do, which was work in museums. So, since then, I've worked like a couple of different roles in education. I've done school tours. I've taught in distance learning environments. So actually working like with a green screen behind me and like broadcasting out.
What do you put on the green screen?
Artwork.
Okay.
And gallery stills. So we would do like, and this is when I lived in Philly, we would do distance learning sessions all over the country and like bring kids to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And then made a transition to adult programs and thinking of like lectures and art history classes and gallery programs. And now I've made this switch to, like I said, interpretation, but working specifically on the website, how our digital collection is used, but also like labels when people walk into the gallery, like getting to like read them and making sure they make sense for a visitor.
Oh, okay. So do you do like the copy or the type on?
Our curators write all our labels,
okay,
and then educators kind of read behind them, just with that eye of, hey, nobody knows what the word means.
Right.
Like, let's define it.
Yeah, let's make it more for someone like me. I'm really trying here.
Yeah. So we do that, and any sort of like digital interactive in the gallery.
Yeah.
I coordinate those projects too. Okay. So again, trying to like make the art have meaning, give people a reason to stop and take a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really rewarding work. You feel like you're activating something that is important to everybody and giving people a reason to come in and learn something.
Yeah. And art, I mean, I went to, is it the Museum of Modern Art? It's in New York, and it's got some weird stuff in there.
Yeah, MoMA's pretty bonkers.
Yeah. And I was there.
Could be the Whitney too, though. That's American art, but
I will double check. I think it was the MoMA, and I went there a few years ago with my friend Hannah, and we were just like, what the heck is this? And I talked to my cousin afterwards about it because I was just like, I was so confused. And he was like, but isn't there a little bit of beauty in your confusion?
I love that. Don't you just love when you can have your question answered with a question?
Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it definitely made me think. And there's beauty with that too, and like kind of opening up your perspective on things. And especially as we get older, I find we get more and more entrenched in what we believe and what I think, these things that I've thought all these years are obviously true. And then I feel like sometimes art kind of pushes back on that a little bit and like forces you. I mean, whether it's writing, whether it's actual physical art, it challenges us to be a little bit more comfortable with our humanity, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a better way to say it.
Well, and it's the idea that discomfort is okay. Being uncomfortable and not knowing everything or not knowing, even in this conversation, I've said, well, I'm not quite sure about that. Like we do that a lot in museum education because we can't assume we know everything. Like we can't assume we know everything about Hilma's story because she burned it all. We weren't there to read it. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Come on.
But that discomfort, I think, is so important to just growing and like progressing as a person. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, like right now, talking with you, an art expert, I feel a little bit, I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone with
You're doing
it.
great.
So, well, thank you. But, and same thing you're saying right now, there's some beauty in being just uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I say one more thing? The Guggenheim, you mentioned MoMA. The Guggenheim is in New York. It's by an architect named Frank Lloyd Wright, and it's the spiral building. So it's that one. And that's how the galleries are when you go up. That's how works are hung in those spirals. And that was the exhibition. In the book, it was like hung as people walked up.
Okay. In the modern story.
Correct.
Yeah.
In the modern storyline. And Hilma's paintings are about, this series of paintings are about, travels through life. So, like, birth to death. And they all have titles as such. Adolescence, middle age, whatever. Yeah. But something that the book talks about, and I don't know if it's true, and I would love if it is, but it's this idea, right, that they're setting forth that Hilma did things first. She came up with ideas first. Before Kandinsky made his abstract art, he came and saw Hilma's studio.
Who is Kandinsky?
Sorry. Kandinsky is a well-known Russian abstract artist, but very well known for like big shapes, like circles all over the place. And if you look at a Kandinsky side by side with Hilma's work, it's just like the same. And so the book includes a scene where Kandinsky goes to her studio and sees her work. And what's he going to do but go home and start doing that?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of historical assertion. Like in their research, they found that he was in Sweden. He was going to these studios, and then his art changed. His art changed from something to something else. So we can't prove it, but you can sort of say, maybe.
Yeah.
But along the same lines, Hilma apparently in this book had drawn this spiral. And the spiral is the shape of the Guggenheim. And she had drawn this spiral saying that this is where my paintings will be. And then that's where in the book they ended up.
Okay.
So again, it's this idea of like having a plan for your work or your life, and it just not the plan not being there for you yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the Friday nights, were they doing the seances then? How was that conducted?
Yeah. So seances were like a part of everyday culture. It's not that it was artists only. So Matilda was hosting them and would have many people, intellectuals, that would come to like her house, and they would try and commune through Matilda with certain people. Okay. I think Hilma in particular lost a daughter. Lost a sister at a young age, and she was always trying to connect with her. And then they brought Sigrid in, who was a very well-known psychic, and they kind of created their own group out of that 5. So yeah, it would just involve. I think they would usually go to Sigrid's or Matilda's, and then once they realized their purpose, which was to create these paintings through the spirits that were channeled by Sigrid to Hilma, and then Hilma would kind of give direction. So Anna and Cornelia were really like mixing paints, making sure they had supplies, and what is theorized by these authors is they were actually mark making too. So they were making part of these paintings with Hilma.
What is mark making?
Sorry, like actual like making paint strokes. It wasn't just Hilma, is what they're saying. And the big point of contention present day is that it's not just Hilma's name on these works. It should be at least 2 other women. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last question I always ask is, who would you recommend this story to?
Anyone. Like I said, I think it has a lot of entry points for people. You know, there is this kind of contemporary storyline that is very much ripped from the headlines of art museums having to grapple with where their money comes from. And that's a very personal thing for people. So I think that's something that people can see as like a way to maybe find entry into the story. But at its heart, this idea of like, you know, the unsung artist, the unsung person and the life that she lived, like she would be lost if it weren't for her, you know, family discovering the work and creating a foundation and shopping her art around. I shouldn't use that term, but the idea of like wanting to share her art with everyone else. So yeah, I don't think you have to be an art person to read this book and like it. It's not like you're going to get an art history lesson on who matters and who cares. Like, I didn't know she existed. And that's not saying anything. I mean, you know, even though art history is global and we look at everything, I didn't know about a Swedish artist. So, and that's likely to happen. So yeah, just anyone who I think enjoys like a good read, this parallel time, the past and present, I think is interesting. If you're interested in that kind of like, not just telling one story, that's a real interesting way of going about it. But yeah, maybe anyone who believes in spirits too.
Yeah.
Because I think there's some really compelling language about the spiritualism at play and the paintings that came out of it.
Yeah. Well, that is so beautiful, and I really appreciate you bringing your expertise and
passion. I mean, I wouldn't call it expertise. I just like to read.
Yes, you are a great reader, and also I didn't even mention we're in book club together. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh, my favorite book club.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a good one. So anyway, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah. All right, we'll wrap it up. Thank you for spending some time with me and my guest for an episode of Drinks in the Library. For more information about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Drinks in the Library, on the World Wide Web, drinksinthelibrary.com, or shoot me an email at drinkspod@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.